Hi, I'm Stewart Spinks and welcome to episode 379 of my podcast, Beekeeping Short and Sweet. Well, we've had some sunny weather for a change. I've been able to get out to an apiary full of Nucleus colonies. So this week, as promised, my take on what to look out for if you're thinking of buying a Nucleus colony for the start of this new beekeeping season. Beekeeping Short and Sweet, a beekeeping podcast for the inquisitive beekeeper with a short attention span. A beekeeper, in fact, just like me. Hi everyone, it's podcast time once more, and I'm very pleased to report I think I've finally shaken off this latest winter bug that's been dragging me down. I may have said this before, but it's not until you get yourself well on the road to full health again that you realise just how poorly you've been feeling. Rest, accompanied by some warm lemon and honey, has mostly done the trick. I have to say, along with a little help from my GP. Of course, the rest of the world doesn't stop just because you're feeling poorly, and with the new office needing attention, I did drag myself out into the back garden and managed to get the new plaster painted this last week. The electrician is due in at the weekend. In fact, as this podcast goes live, he should be drinking his first cup of coffee. Fingers crossed for that. And by the end of the day, we should be connected to the mains supply and have electrical sockets and lights working. Briefly, in other non-beekeeping news, a quick Morris Minor update for you. For those of you that don't know, I've got a little Morris Minor convertible that I'm trying to, restore, I guess. Anyway, my little convertible is off to have a full paint strip next week, a nice bath and a hose down before coming back to me in about a month's time so I can start cutting out rust and welding in replacement panels. So to say there's lots keeping me busy right now is something of an understatement. Not that I'd have it any other way. I'm certainly not complaining. Back in the world of beekeeping, honey orders are pretty buoyant at the moment. I guess, like me, many others out there are hoping that a little honey will help soothe a sore throat or nasty cough. It really has felt like it's helped me for sure. We were lucky enough to have a break in the weather this week, and the sun popped out for a short while, allowing me to visit our allotment apiary. I was planning to shoot a video showing the progress with the office, but every time I tried to get out into the garden it decided to rain, so I shelved that job for another time, maybe at some point in the week ahead. But the brief sunshine that we did have allowed me to pop over and check in on the Nucleus colonies that we have settled at the allotment apiary, and it was time to give them a little heft and to also check in on the tiny garage roof nuke that I double insulated and then pallet wrapped with that black thin cling wrap type of stuff that you get on pallets and some parcels maybe. I really wanted to talk today about what makes a good Nucleus colony, or possibly even a great Nucleus colony. I hear so frequently of new or inexperienced beekeepers struggling with their first couple of years beekeeping and how the bees never really got going initially. It turns out it isn't always the new beekeeper's fault, and they just got started with either a swarm or a poorly populated or poorly put together nuke. My visit to our allotment apiary reminded me just how difficult it is for anyone without experience to identify what is or isn't a strong Nucleus colony. I can relate to this from my recent experiences with some of the tradesmen who have been involved with the preparation and build of my new home office. I didn't really have any idea as to what was needed, and with hindsight, some of the work that's been completed, particularly with the groundwork prior to the build, was done maybe to make life easier for the builders rather than the best possible job for me. Nothing too major, you understand, just a little niggle here and there that, if I'd more experience with that particular task, I would have perhaps felt more able to question or voice my concerns. As it was, the work was done, but not exactly as I anticipated or wanted, maybe. The same experience can be compared to buying a Nucleus colony by a beginner beekeeper. I know this because I have absolutely been in the same position as a beekeeper. It will probably help if I explain my experience and then go on to describe what you should expect from a Nucleus colony if you're planning to buy one, or maybe two. So, many years ago, in one of my come back to beekeeping moments, I needed to buy a couple of Nucleus colonies. I'm going to switch to shorthand for Nucleus colonies now. As you gain experience, you'll come to know them as being simply called nukes. So, I needed a couple of nukes. I had rejoined a beekeeping association, obviously a good thing to do, and figured I would buy my nukes from one of the members. At this point, I was very keen to get going and wanted to get my bees as soon as I possibly could. I placed my order in the late autumn and then hassled the poor beekeeper continuously all through the winter and into the early spring. So you can see it's partly my fault. Eventually, the guy selling me the nukes gave up trying to delay me and sold me 2 nukes around late March or early April time. The nukes were supposed to be 6-frame national nukes, but what I got were 4-frame nukes with a couple of frames of foundation. Now, as someone who had a vague understanding of beekeeping at that time, I certainly knew I should not have had any frames of foundation in the nuke. I complained and was turned away. I tried to discuss my concerns with the association chairman, who also turned me away. Basically, I was being told I didn't really understand beekeeping and what I'd been given was acceptable. I eventually took photographs to the chairman to show him what I'd bought, and, wouldn't you just know it, within a week I'd been offered a partial refund. Now, the reason for explaining this is twofold really, I guess. First up, I personally put a lot of pressure on the beekeeper to get me my nukes as early as possible, and that wasn't really fair on him. But he was selling a lot of nukes, and with my understanding of beekeeping now, what I got wasn't really an overwintered nuke, but rather a split in the early spring with a couple of extra frames of foundation added. He should have simply told me that they wouldn't be ready until May and made me wait, or not accepted the order. Secondly, as a new beekeeper, you might not fully understand what you're supposed to be getting, and could simply walk away with a nuke of this standard and be left struggling for the rest of the season, not fully understanding why your bees took so long to build up. One of the best things to happen in recent years is the price of nukes has risen dramatically, and with it, I believe, the general standard of the bees, brood and frames within those nukes. That is, as long as you buy them from a reputable source. There will always be cheap nukes for sale, but with those you run the risk of poor quality bees, poor quality queens, poorly drawn frames, old comb, old frames, and even diseased bees. New beekeepers will spend a small fortune on beehives and all the other ancillary equipment that they need, and then maybe try to cut corners when paying for a nuke of bees. Don't be that beekeeper. Obviously, not everyone is going to be like that. And of course, not every beekeeper can afford to pay for the very best quality bees and frames. There are choices and decisions to be made. But even if you're buying cheap, it doesn't mean you should buy poor quality bees, and certainly never diseased bees. So what makes up a good quality nuke of bees, and where should you buy them from? Let's spin that around first. Who to buy from? Well, someone you can trust. It's as simple as that, really. This might be a friend who already keeps bees. If you trust them and have been able to help out, you might already know the bees that you're going to get and the quality that they represent, which is perfect in most cases. Your local association might have nukes for sale. Again, another excellent option. Then there are the beekeeping retailers who sell bees. I'm obviously biased towards Thorn Beehives because, well, they sell my bees. But more than that, They've been around for many, many years, have fantastic customer service, and if you ever have any problem with the bees, they will sort it out for you immediately. There are, of course, lots of other suppliers out there who are also selling nukes with different compositions and different qualities. So I'm going to explain what the National Bee Unit describes as their guidelines for purchasing Nucleus colonies, and then compare that with the bees that we supply both directly and through Thorn beehives. First up, if you can inspect the bees prior to purchase, it really helps settle any questions you might have about health, quality or temperament. The issue here, of course, is as a beginner beekeeper, you really won't have any idea really about what you're looking at, and maybe feel a little unwilling to question a more experienced beekeeper showing you their bees. Let's face it, you don't want to upset them, and if you're like me, you wouldn't want to openly criticise someone you're looking to buy bees from. So let's run through the MBU spec for a nuke. First up, make sure you know what hive type you have so that the frames in your nuke will fit your hive. It sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised at how many people don't ask that question. If you buy a Langstroth nuke and you have a national hive, it simply won't fit. Most nukes these days are 5 or 6 frames, have a minimum of 3 frames of brood in all stages, have a healthy laying queen with frames of food including nectar and pollen. They're normally supplied in a nuke box, which can be made of a range of materials but should be in a clean and well maintained state. All of the frames should have been put together correctly and nailed or pinned firmly and correctly. Whilst they don't have to be new, they should be clean and well maintained. Comb should be fully drawn out and there should be no foundation visible. Frames should have a minimal amount of brace comb and should move freely within the nuke box, although some will have been propolised together, so we'll need the use of a hive tool to separate them. The queen should be an established young queen and should be laying well with eggs visible in cells. The queen is normally marked with the standard colour for the year. The queen's wings can be clipped at the request of the purchaser, but otherwise would be supplied unclipped. Brood should be present in at least 3 of those frames and be in all stages. That's to say eggs, larvae and sealed cells with brood inside. It should be a continuous and constant pattern across the frames. There should be at least 30% sealed brood across all of those brood frames, with no more than 15% as drone brood. There should be no active queen cells. This means queen cells in use with an egg or developing larvae inside. You may of course find an occasional rudimentary queen cup, but that's fine. Finally, there should be at least 2 frames of food with a good covering of adult worker bees that are good-tempered when handled by a competent beekeeper and in favourable weather conditions. I should also add that the brood should show no signs of pests or disease, just as the adult workers should show no signs of pests or disease. So there you have it, what to look for if you buy a nuke. So how do my Nucleus colonies compare? Well, in agreement with Thorn beehives, we only supply overwintered nukes using their first quality frames and premium grade foundation. These are 6-frame nukes, so when transferred into a full-size hive, they only have a small number of frames to draw out before they can have a super added. All of the nukes are treated in the autumn for varroa and again over winter with an oxalic acid treatment. Each nuke is headed up with a queen of the same year that it was created, so all of our overwintered nukes will, in 2026, be supplied with a queen raised in 2025, which will be a blue dot queen. We do supply nukes later in the spring and early summer, and those will have this year's queen in, and this year that will be a white dot queen. We supply 4 frames of brood in all stages, not the minimum of 3 as prescribed by the MBU, with 2 full frames of food. The nukes are supplied in a fantastic wooden travel box made by Thorn Beehives, and this can be used as an emergency nuke box or for collecting swarms, and will last for years to come if well looked after. As an ex-seasonal bee inspector, I'm always checking for disease and dealing with it immediately if I find any. I have years of experience in checking hundreds and hundreds of colonies and understand what healthy and unhealthy colonies look like. I never tolerate pests or disease in my colonies and act quickly to eradicate it. Our queens are some of the best in the UK, being produced here in the UK. They're mild-mannered, productive and slow to swarm. We use them in our own honey production colonies, so I obviously think that they're the best we can get. You might think our nukes are expensive, but they will repay you with honey in their first season and beyond. They will give you a gentle and enjoyable introduction to beekeeping and help you gain valuable experience without unnecessary challenges through those early years. That then is what to look out for if you're considering buying a Nucleus colony this spring. Be sure to order early, stocks are always limited, and be patient in waiting for the weather to warm up sufficiently to give them a great start in your apiary. Well, that's it for this week. More of the ongoing change in location and the journey through these winter weeks as we head forward. But for all of you who haven't yet signed up to my Patreon page, I, together with Steph, have been creating beekeeping content for many years now. And if you're looking for some straightforward, down-to-earth tips and techniques, help and advice, then do take a look at my Patreon page. We have over 1,700 individual beekeeping posts, videos and podcasts filled with useful and timely help and advice. My approach is pragmatic and calm, sometimes entertaining, but always with help and support for the beekeepers at the heart of what I do. I keep my videos short and concise wherever possible, no waffle, no flannel, just honest beekeeping advice from years of keeping bees. Take a look and join me for the new 2026 beekeeping season. It'll cost you less than a jar of honey, and you never know, there may be something there that will help improve your beekeeping. Check us out online at www.patreon.com/Norfolk Honey.